Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. So today's video is going to be the very basics of how to use gilding flakes and fab foils, both of which can be used with your stamps and stencils without needing any heat. So if you like the foiled look but you don't want to add a foiling machine to your craft room, this is just the video for you to show you how to use these products from the very beginning. So I have a selection of gilding flakes from IndigoBlu. Now there are lots of gilding flakes on the market. I've tried a couple and I always end up coming back to these. These are my absolute favourite. The gilding flakes are nice and big. They're not too static, so they're not too messy. The flakes are large, as you can see there, and the colours are just absolutely gorgeous. They're so vibrant. They have a selection of different flakes on their website. So these are just some of the products that I've got in my stash. Now, with gilding flakes, because it can be difficult to put them back in the tub, I always recommend putting them into a large Tupperware tub if you have one. It just makes it easier. You'll see today that it's not impossible to use them in the small tubs they come in, but it does just make life a little bit easier. Now you're going to need a sticky surface. You need a tacky glue, so when it's dry it needs to stay tacky. So I've got the IndigoBlu FlitterGlu, and I've also got the Crafters Workshop Tacky When Dry Gel Medium. This is a very similar consistency to stencil butter, so if you're familiar with that product you'll know what that feels like to use. You can also use double-sided adhesive sheets, as I'm going to show you today. Now, to get a polished look on your gilding flakes, you'll need an abrasive foam sponge. So this is a Scoochy foam from IndigoBlu, or you can use a paintbrush, and I'm going to show you both of those today. I've also got a piece of fat foam. Now I'm sure you could use any type of foam that you've got in your stash that's absorbent, a bit like a sponge, because you're going to need to ink that up with the glue. And we've got the fab foils as well. I've got a few colours from Wow embossing powder, and you'll need a palette knife. These are just a couple of scraps of double-sided adhesive sheets that I've got, so I'm going to show you how you can use those as well with both gilding flakes and fab foils. And then I've got some scraps of white and black cardstock. Gilding flakes do look stunning on black, but I really want to show you the contrast between the two. I've got a selection of stencils, and then I've got this gorgeous stamp set from IndigoBlu. Now I'm using rubber stamps today, but you can equally use clear stamps. You'll see in my videos on my channel I use both. I'm also going to show you how you can add gilding flakes to super thick slap it on. But if you've got any texture paste in your stash, then you can just give it a go. I think any kind of texture paste will work, but I like the slap it on because it dries clear, so you keep the shine of the gilding flakes. So for the first one, we're going to use the FlitterGlu from IndigoBlu. This is a flake and glitter glue, so it stays tacky once it's dry. Now there are, again, other products on the market. I haven't tried them, so I can't recommend them, but I just know this one works. It's really, really good. So all we're going to do is add some of the FlitterGlu to the sponge, and we're just turning this into an ink pad. So you don't need loads of the product, but you just need to push it into the sponge with a palette knife, just so that you've got really good coverage. You can add a little bit more if you feel that you need to, but you don't need loads. Once that's done, make sure you've sealed your glue bottle. The FlitterGlu is a twist bottle, so it never clogs, which is great. And then I'm going to use these squirrels to demonstrate this technique here. I'm going to use one solid silhouette stamp, which is the smaller one, and then the larger squirrel is very finely detailed. Now, when you're stamping, you need to make sure that you don't keep the stamp in contact with the cardstock for too long. You literally just want the image to transfer and then quickly remove it. Otherwise, it will stick to your cardstock and you risk tearing the card that you're working on. I wanted to use a finely detailed stamp and a solid silhouette so you could just see the difference. And once you finish stamping, make sure that you spray your stamps with water so that the tacky glue doesn't dry on them. You don't want the glue to dry on your stamps. Now this is a water-based glue, so it's very easy to clean off your stamps, and I've not had any issues at all when using the tacky glue. It certainly hasn't ruined any of my stamps, but you just want to make sure that the glue doesn't dry, so just keep it wet. Spray it with water and then wash it as soon as you can. So I've just stamped the hedgehog here as well because I'm going to show you the same technique using fab foils, but while we're waiting for those just to dry, we're going to move on to using stencils. So first of all, I want to show you how you can use the same FlitterGlu sponge through your stencil. So I've got this Falling Heart stencil from Funky Fossil Designs, and all I'm doing is just pushing the sponge through the stencil. The same as you might with an ink pad if you're using ink pad directly to your stencil. But yeah, it works absolutely perfectly. I know you can't really see this on the camera here, but in real life you can see where the tacky glue's gone through, and obviously you'll be able to see it in a bit. Same process again, spritz your stencil with water, pop it to one side, and then wash it when you're finished. So next we're going to use the Tacky When Dry Gel Medium, and we're going to apply that through the leaf fall stencil. So as you can see, it's a lovely creamy white colour, so you can easily see where you're applying it. It goes on just like a stencil butter would, so if you're familiar with, say, the Simon Hurley Lunar Pastes or the Crafters Workshop stencil butter, it goes on just like that. So I'm just using a palette knife here. I'm just working on a scrap piece of paper underneath. And then once I've got a good coverage, you can pop any excess back in the pot. And then as you lift the stencil, you can see the beautiful pattern that's left. Again, spritz it with water and don't drop it like I've just done here. You'll see that it has just given it a bit of texture, but for the purpose of the video, it shows you exactly still how to use the product with the gilding flakes a bit later on. So I'll pop that aside to dry, and I'm just going to do exactly the same process using the geometric Giraffe stencil from Funky Fossil Designs, because I'm going to show you how you can use the fab foil in exactly the same way as the gilding flakes. So while that's drying, I'm going to now bring in this Seahorse Stencil, and I'm going to add some metallic paint to the super thick Slap It On. So first of all, I'm just bringing in my grip mat, and I'm just going to pop my piece of cardstock on there with the stencil just to kind of hold that in place. I'm still struggling with the fact that my grip mat is not the bigger size, so yeah, I really should have checked the measurements before I purchased. Anyway, I'm just going to add a little bit of the metallic paint here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of Slap It On. You'll see later on I've used way too much product. You really don't need this much. But I'm just going to mix the two products together with a palette knife. These Slap It On super thick gloss, it dries clear and glossy. So that's why I'm using it today with the gilding flakes. If you use a texture paste that dries with a colour that's matte, the gilding flakes will probably just get lost in all the colour. But because this dries clear, the gilding flakes do really stand out once the product's dry. So I'm just going to add the two colours onto the Seahorse here. I want them to kind of mix a little bit. I really want the purpley pink bluey shades here. And I'm just using the Sheffield Steel Silver Gilding Flakes. And when I lift the stencil up to reveal the image, you can see you've got a really lovely crisp image there. So I need to just spritz my stencil with some water until I can wash it, and then I'm going to pop the Seahorse to one side to dry. This is just another way of using gilding flakes without actually needing any tacky glue, and just adding them into mediums that you've already got in your stash. So I'm just going to bring back in a couple of the card panels. Now the one on the right is the heart stencil that we use the FlitterGlu through the stencil using the sponge, and on the left is two of the squirrels that are stamped on black cardstock, and I'm just going to add some of these gilding flakes here. Now you'll see some of the flakes are really big, so I can put some of them back in the pot. I want a variation of colour on the images here, so I'm able to just select some of those flakes. I've got some massive gold flakes here as well, so I'm able to just use the whole piece on the small squirrel and then get a variation of colours. So you really do have a little bit of control over the colours of the flakes that you're using. Once you've got a good coverage, just use your fingers to rub the flakes into all the tacky glue. And then here I'm just demonstrating how using a paintbrush, you can just go over all of the images and really kind of buff up and bring out the detail. So that is just using a stencil and the FlitterGlu with the sponge, and then a paintbrush just to bring out the detail. Now for the stamped images, we're going to use exactly the same technique here, but this time we're going to use the Scoochy foam. This is the abrasive foam. So I've just rubbed those flakes in with my fingers. I'm just going to put the excess back in the pot. And then I'm just going to bring in that Scoochy foam, and I'm just going to run that all over the image. Now, I definitely think this is where the foam comes into its own over a paintbrush, especially when you're using gilding flakes on really fine detailed stamped images. So the foam just really helps to bring out that detail. As you can see there, you've got all the lovely detail in the body, in the tail. So yeah, it looks really, really pretty. So here I'm just demonstrating how to use gilding flakes on double-sided adhesive sheets. I cut some strips of the scraps of adhesive sheets that I had at the beginning, stuck it to a scrap of white cardstock, and I'm just showing you here how removing the release paper, you can then use the gilding flakes over the top, and it's exactly the same process. Just use your fingers to rub in the flakes, and then you can use the paintbrush or the Scoochy foam to really bring out the detail. Now on the right hand side I've used the paintbrush, and on the left hand side I'm going to use the Scoochy foam, and I'm just going to show you here how the Scoochy foam just scratches it ever so slightly. So if you've got an image that you really want the gilding flakes to be really smooth, I would recommend using the paintbrush. So now I'm going to bring in the Tacky when dry gel medium that we've used. It's still creamy white, so it's not quite dry, and I'm just using my heat tool just to heat set that. It is better if you can leave it to dry naturally, but if you are in a rush, you can use a heat tool. Just be really quick, make sure it doesn't bubble up, and then as soon as it's all clear, you know it's ready to use. So to add the gilding flakes, we're just going to do it in exactly the same way. So I'm just using my fingers just to push the gilding flakes into the tacky medium, and just making sure that there's really good coverage. You don't want any tacky areas left uncovered. And then this is where the paintbrush really kind of is a bit of a letdown, probably because my paintbrush isn't very stiff. So maybe a stiff brush would work a lot better here, but it just struggles to bring out the detail from the stenciled image. Obviously, because it's a texture paste and it's raised, it's harder to get into all the detail, and this is where the sponge really held its own. So I'm just using this Scoochy sponge here all over the panel. This is the abrasive sponge, and it just really brings out the detail. As you can see, the image just looks really crisp. You've got all that lovely texture, and yeah, it just looks really gorgeous. So you can see even on the panel that I dropped, where it got a little bit bubbly on the left hand side, the gilding flakes have still stuck really nicely, and you're left with a really beautiful effect. So next I just want to show you how you can use exactly the same techniques with the Wow Fab foils. So I've got the stamped hedgehog image at the top, and at the bottom I've got these strips of double-sided adhesive sheets. I'm going to use the rose gold and the teal fab foil today. There's an absolutely massive selection of different coloured foils that Wow do, so it's worth checking them out if you think this is something you'd be interested in. I'm just trimming it with my long bladed scissors, and you can just put the rest back in the packet. It's all wrapped around a little cardboard slip. Now, Wow do sell a bonding powder which you can use with the fab foils. Basically, it's like an embossing powder. You heat it up, and then as it gets hot, it gets sticky, and you can transfer the foil that way. However, I just think this is so much easier. You don't need heat here, and you get exactly the same effect. So I think it's down to what you prefer, really. I haven't tried the bonding powder myself, but I just think this is such an easy way of doing it without needing to use heat. So I've just trimmed off a little bit of the rose gold and a little bit of the teal, and I'm just going to show you how it works. So I've placed it over the hedgehog, I've made sure it's nice and smooth, and you can see the minute it touches the tacky areas, it attaches itself to it. So you can just give it a really nice push all over the image, nice and carefully. If you miss any areas, you can just pop the foil back down and attach a little bit more. And then it just peels it really easily once you've made sure that you've covered all the areas. Now there's a little bit of a bit of a chunky bit at the bottom. I think that's where I've misstamped. But you can see how the detail of that stamped image has really picked up on the rest of the image. So I'm doing exactly the same here on the white cardstock. These are the stamped squirrel images, and again, this was really kind of interesting because it picked up all the detail on the silhouette of where the glue had kind of beaded on the stamp, so you got a really interesting effect here. But yeah, I think the foils really just pop so much better on black, but I'm just showing you that you can use it on either cardstock and just how it looks really. Now for the double-sided adhesive sheet strips, I'm just going to show you how you can kind of multicolour foil. So I'm just using the teal, and I'm just like attaching bits of it all over the sticky areas, and then I'm going to do exactly the same with the rose gold, and you end up with this beautiful multi-toned foil effect. So that's a really fun way of using the fab foils as well. And finally, I'm just going to do exactly the same thing on the geometric giraffe. So this is using the Tacky when dry medium from the Crafter's Workshop, and it works in exactly the same way. Obviously, because it's more of a texture paste, you do get a slightly raised image, but I'm just showing how it works beautifully both with the gilding flakes and here with the fab foils. So again, it's a great way of using up any scraps of foil. As you can see, there's still plenty of foil left to be used on these strips, so yeah, you just get a really gorgeous finish. So So I really hope that this has been helpful for those of you that are new to fab foils and gilding flakes. I really hope that it's helped you to see the different ways that you can use them, both with stamps and stencils, double-sided adhesive sheets, and also how the gilding flakes can be used in exactly the same way, that no heat's required, it won't damage your stamps, and there's so many different fun techniques that you can use with these products. So I really hope this video has given you a little bit of an insight into how to use gilding flakes and fab foils, especially if you're completely new to it. I really hope that this was helpful. If you've got any questions or anything that I've missed, please don't forget to leave me a comment below and I will reply to you. I reply to all my comments. And please don't forget to like this video if you've enjoyed it. It really just helped me out. If you'd like to see more from my channel, then please don't forget to subscribe, and then you'll be notified of any new videos that I post. And as always, I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.